Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com, which is the home of online learning for double bass players. So if you want to take your playing further, whether you're new to the instrument or if you're a more experienced bass player, we've got something for you over at the website with our courses, lessons and interviews. We're continuing now with our series of questions for the greatest bass players in the world, and we're back with the jazz bass legends talking about basses, strings, everything to do with equipment. So here's the question. What double bass gear are you currently using?
Gear, I've had my same bass since I was 16. We've done a bunch of research and we think we may actually know who the maker of my instrument is now after all these years. And it looks like this bass was made by Busan and his apprentice Matteo. And the label inside says Matteo Busan, but it's actually Matteo Busan. Is what we think. So this bass was made in the it's 300 years old, it was made in the 1700s, and it's been my baby, and it kicks my ass every time I play it. Sorry if I'm using a bad word. And then I have the bass in the background is actually a replica of this bass. So for me, I can't really travel with this bass anymore because it's just too old and fragile. So I've got another bass that I can go on the road with, and it is pretty much a similar copy, not identical, but close enough, and the string length and everything is the same, so I can play it, which is cool. Like I said, working on this new BSX bridge system, this pickup, it's a little fatter, so it's a little bit different, but it's got piezo pickups built into it, and it roars. It's amazing. And we're kind of fine-tuning it, but it's, I play his electric uprights, and I think they sound fantastic, and I'm just like, Dino, man, you got to put this on my bass. So we put it on my travel bass just to see before I did it on this bass, and it's amazing. So we're working on that for the pickup. I just started getting to know the Mark bass guys, working with them. We might be developing an amp together, which will be very cool because I play electric bass and acoustic bass, so we're going to work on possibly a real serious doubling amp, so I'm excited about that. On the acoustic bass, I've been playing Spyrocore Vikes my entire life. I've been with Labella for many years on electric bass strings, and we've talked about developing an acoustic bass set, but we haven't done that yet. I'm very open to that, but I've been playing Spyrocore Vikes forever, and you find what works for you. I've tried a few different things. These work for me. I'm used to them. This is, I think it'd be, I wish I had a bunch of basses. I only have 2 basses. In fact, I only had one for years. I just got that one. But I think it'd be cool to have other basses with different strings and different setups, some old school, some new school. But for right now, for me, I love the sustain and the clarity and the growl of these, and I've been playing them forever. But find what works for you. There are no rules. Make yourself happy because that's why you play. You don't play to please anybody else. You don't play for anyone else. You play for yourself. So you use what you want to use, how you want to use it, and just make the best music you can on your instrument, because that's truly what it's about. I don't care what anybody plays. I don't care what anybody endorses. I don't care, rock on, God bless you. I want to play what works for me, and you should do exactly the same as what works for you. Find your voice, and there you go. So anyway, been a pleasure. Thank you for putting up with me. It's quarantine. I haven't gotten out of the house much, so it's kind of like walking around, hitting your head against the walls, and just sitting there at a computer 10 hours a day. Thank you for having me be a part, and keep up the low end, and be safe. Take this seriously. Be safe out there. Thank you all.
What kind of gear did I use? I used the David Gage Lifeline with the David Gage docking station. I have used Labella strings for the past 35 or 40 years. Number 7710 nylon, the black nylon. I use Wiedoeft bass Rawson, Wiedoeft bass Rawson. Wonderful, I'm glad you're back. I use the Nick Epifani Piccolo amp, bass amp head, and Nick Epifani 12-inch bass cabinet that's made especially for me. The bass I've played since 1959, the Juzak made around 1910. Thanks, I'm enjoying this guy play behind me. Jack, Kenny Barron, Chet Baker. Thanks, bye.
This is my upright bass. It's a Fretschner. It's 3/4, and it currently has Pirastro olive strings for the G and D, D'Addario helicore for the A, and D'Addario Zyx for the E. I've also had D'Addario Zyxes for the bottom 2 strings too. There's not a lot of logic why I have the helicore and the Zyx for the A and the E, but I kind of dig the way it is. As far as the pickup goes, it's a Lifeline, David Gage Lifeline Realist pickup. I have a pretty generic carbon fiber bow which does well, it's sturdy, and I'm not allowed to get myself a more fancier bow because the last time I had a more fancier bow I left it on a plane in Brazil. So that's what I have for the moment. In terms of amplification, I use mainly Aguilar and acoustic image. I have the Aguilar AG700 head, I have an Aguilar 12-inch speaker and a 4x10 speaker cabinet. I have the acoustic image Claris head with the 2 channels and the Contra combo amp, which works well. I also really like to use the Grace Felix preamp. It works really well when I'm playing both electric and upright. Allows me to kind of A/B switch from one to the other, but also sounds fantastic on both electric and upright. But I could also blend in my DPA 4099 microphone on the upright with the pickup on the upright as well in that one preamp. If I wasn't using the electric, I could do that. So yeah, it's a fantastic sounding preamp and I'm really happy with that. I also have a bunch of other pedals. And then here are my electric basses. I have a Federa NYC Empire bass, and then a Moulon P bass, and then this Fender is actually my my father-in-law's, Rafael Almazan, who's also a bass player, and it's P bass with a combination of the P bass and back J bass pickup. So that's most of my gear in terms of mics for recording. I mentioned that I use the AKG 414 combination sometimes with the MKH 8040, the Sennheiser, but that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not too much of a gearhead as far as electronic stuff. I have a great amp from Euphonic Audio that's great. I also endorse Galley and Kruger, and I have a great amp from them. But I basically use whatever's in the club because I'm kind of lazy when that stuff comes. As far as strings, I use Ava Perazzi by Piastro, German company. Gray strings. They call it synthetic gut. Has a kind of, it's not a gut core, but it's like a synthetic gut core with metal wrappings, and so it makes it a lot more friendly with the bow than gut strings. Was that it? Pickups. For pickups, I use David Gage Realist. I think it's the closest to the wood sound of the bass, and it doesn't feedback. It's a great pickup, great sound. But practice.
So the equipment that I'm using, I have 2 basses now that I dearly love. This one's a French bass. It's from the late 1800s. It belonged to a great bass player that played in the Tito Puente Orchestra and the Machito Orchestra. His name is Bobby Rodriguez, and this bass recorded many legendary sonic albums with Machito and Tito. It recorded the Afro-Cuban Suite. It recorded Manteca. It did all of the Dance Mania recordings that we know of Tito Puente. So it's dear to me. It has a sound that I truly love, and I travel with this as much as I can. I also have a real beautiful Italian bass that I've been using too. It's from 1833. Its maker, his name is Giuseppe Marcocini. It's from the northern part of Italy, and it's another unbelievable instrument. For strings, I use Pirastros. So the ones I have on is the Eva Perazzis, and this is the Vike sets, which is a little less tension than the actual orchestral tension. And for pickup, I use the Lifeline, the David Gage Lifeline. So occasionally with the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra if we find ourselves in a position where we can sound good enough acoustically, or if there's any technical challenges, I'll use the Lifeline pickup to enhance the bass sound. And I also, for those who know me, I've also played gut strings for quite a long time, and I've been switching on and off. So Perastro also made some really good gut strings for me to use. They're under my name. They're called quarters, and they're a little smaller than the original quarters that Perastro was making years ago, and it's something that also sounds great on instruments. And that's basically the equipment I use. I have bows. I play French bow, and I have four bows that I use. They're in order. So I have a Vigneron, which is a very spectacular bow, Louis Bazin bow, a Schliep's bow that I acquired from my teacher, and Marco Raposo French bow. And that's basically it. Those are my equipment, and you know, I strive to try to do my best acoustically with the instrument, and you know, just try to prevail with these beautiful bass notes.
So I play. I have two basses. One is, they're both German basses, and they both don't have makers' names labels in them. So we know the region of Germany they came from. We know more or less that they're both about somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 years old. One bass, my other bass, has a much darker kind of, a much brighter kind of a sound. This has the darker sound. You probably have heard this bass on Ray Brown recordings. This is one that used to belong to him. So I'm very lucky. I love both of my basses. This bass is a bit more work for me to bow. Just the string length is so long. I have to stretch my fingers a little bit wider to cover my intervals, but it's, you know, it's worth it. I also use Perastro Ava strings, the Ava Patitucci. I like these. You know, I spend a lot of time playing different strings, experimenting like all of us do. It's kind of an expensive experiment, but I was trying to find the right string for what I do. If I played in an orchestra, I would probably use strings that were suited to playing that repertoire. But I love playing with the bow as well as pizzicato. So I'm looking for a jazz string that has a warm sound. I also like the warmth of gut strings, but I didn't especially want to play gut strings. So the Avas are kind of that hybrid for me. They bow great for what I do, the kind of melodies and solos I like to play, great for that. And also I can get the warm jazz sound I'm looking for with them, with a little crisp attack. The amplification I use, I really don't have an amplifier. What? Because I either play completely without amplification or I use a microphone, and I use the Electro Voice RE20. This is the RE20 microphone. They're not crazy expensive, you know, which is great. You can find them used, they're pretty popular, and they're war horses. They really are durable, last a long time. So I've had this for a lot of years. And if I go to a concert and I have to play, I don't especially take this with me, but I may ask for one if it's, you know, a big kind of venue that has a bunch of microphone choices. But, you know, if the engineer has a microphone collection that they really love, then I say, hey, go for it. You know, if you want to use something you like better than this, please. And I usually have a monitor wedge next to me, and I use that like I would an amplifier. So I can use the microphone in front of the bass. I make sure I position it in a way that I don't get any feedback in the monitor. And nowadays, if you get an engineer that knows what he or she is doing, they can usually dial out the frequencies in the monitor so you don't get any feedback. But anyway, I use a monitor wedge, and that's my amplifier. Or if it's a small place and nobody's using a microphone or amplifiers, or then I don't. So I just allow my ears and playing to adjust to the totally acoustic situation. And yeah, that's kind of what I do. One more thing, I have an old Fretschner bow that I really like. It's got a really interesting frog to it and a kind of a nice long stem here that I like a lot. So it's hard to find these, but I got one, I like it, and that's what I use. Fretschner bow.
Bass players love talking about strings and pickups and amps, and I really enjoy the process of experimenting with different equipment all the time, different strings, and there's so many options available. It's a little overwhelming and expensive to experiment, but it's really so important to our sounds to try to get close to the idea of what's in our head and translate it through the instrument. I have 3 basses at home. One is a travel bass that I take on the road, which is an Eastman, a Chinese hybrid bass with a detachable neck. It's got 2 Gensler gut strings on the top 2, and the bottom are Tomastic Vikes. I have an old German bass that I've had since 1994 that has a G olive string, and the other 3 are D'Addario Helicore light gauge. And then I have a beautiful newer instrument made by Ben Puglisi of Australia that I really mostly use as a classical instrument that's strung with original Flexicore strings. For pickups, I enjoy Schertler's new version of his pickup, David Gage's Lifeline. And then I also use a microphone a lot, which is a Schoeps that's clamped to the side of the bass that goes through a mic preamp, a Grace Design Felix preamp. That signal goes into a powered monitor of some sort. So as far as amplification of the bass, it's always somewhat of a compromise to me, but most importantly is on my mind is the instrument being heard by those I'm playing with, and is it translating to the front of the house? So, I kind of adapt to the situation, to those musicians I'm playing with, to the room I'm playing in. I've done quite a bit of solo gigs in the last year where I've used no amplification. And then sometimes I might be playing with a band that's quite loud where I need, much more. So I try to adapt to each situation, but maintain a certain integrity of sound, no matter which way I do end up amplifying the instrument. Kind of paramount to all that is working on our acoustic sound so that when we do amplify it is the best that we can possibly make it.
This is my lovely 1894 Glazell bass, previously owned by Don Snow, a retired bass player from the Seattle Symphony. It was found by a student of mine who ended up not being able to afford it, and called me up and said, if you want to buy it, it's yours. So I had already advised him to buy it, so I did. It suffered an unfortunate accident for which I was responsible, in which the scroll got knocked off here and the front got cracked. Put your basses down on the floor. Do not lean them on chairs. And Sarah Baumforth in Seattle did a beautiful restoration job and a new neck graft with a nice big modern overstand that keeps these sloped shoulders well away from your hands when you're playing in high positions. I'm quite fond of the instrument. It has nice depth and clarity. use a Schertler pickup, the condenser mic kind that's inside a cork covering. It's the least pickup-y sounding pickup that I have tried. I don't particularly like the dynamic mic kinds that sit on the top of the bass. I also use this Ear Trumpet Labs Nadine mic that they've lent me. I took it to Washington for a Tiny Desk concert, schlepped it across the country only to find when I got there that they already had one. So I could have saved myself some trouble. Obviously, people find this to be a successful mic for recording. It requires 48 volts phantom power, and it's not ideal for live situations where you're in a club, or it's feedback prone, as are all microphones in that kind of circumstance. But if you're not using it with an amp right on stage, it's quite successful. It's good for in a concert hall or for front of house miking, and very good for recording. And my friend Peter Axelson in Gothenburg has made a mic that is a little better in terms of rejecting feedback, and has my name on it, so I guess I should be advertising that too. It does not have nearly as convenient a way of attaching to the bass, so this is a pretty attractive solution. I also have a lovely bass that Seth Kimmel made for me that you can find on his website. It's at this point linked to a student from New York who is escaping the intensity of the pandemic there by visiting her sister here in Portland, and she needed a bass, and I just said, here, use this one. So I can't show that to you. And I'm doing my best to avoid thinking about the basses I've sold that I shouldn't have, or other basses that I admire that I wish I could afford. This one is, this and the Kimmel bass, they're both working out pretty well. And the amp that I use is an acoustic image combo that's worked out very well. I've used other amps. Sometimes you go somewhere and there's an amp there. If you have a decent pickup and you can manage to fiddle with the controls and you have enough time to get things adjusted, it's not as critical. One of the critical things for me with an amp is to be able to carry it. And the acoustic image is less than 30 pounds, and I can still manage that.
Everybody has always been asking me about what equipment do I use, what kind of bass do you have, what kind of strings do you use, what's your amplifier, etc., etc. And everybody's really different, and I think we as bass players are trying to find something that actually helps us satisfy the sound that you hear in your head. The strings that I'm playing on today, because like I said, I've been working on my bowing a lot, and I'm using these strings that I have here, the G and D, are Pirastro Olive, and they're less tension than the steel string. And the A and the E is from Innovation, which is a British string, I think, from the UK. It too has less tension. It's a little larger. It's not, I think it's called the Innovation Honey Jazz string, whatever that means. But they only had a couple jazz, quote-unquote, kind of strings. And a friend of mine had these, and I kind of liked the sound of it, so I thought I'd check these out. One of the reasons I was checking out, because I've been playing for the last 20 plus years using the Velvet Anima strings, which are gut-like, but not, from Velvets from Switzerland. And just this past year, they have ceased to make them anymore, which has not been good for me because I actually was so happy. But you can bow them, but they make several different ones. But I use the model that says Anima, and it's a little smaller than the larger one with the gut string, called the Garbo, and the Animas, and then the Velvet Blue, and then they have a Compass 180, which is kind of a steel string, but it's everything, the tension is so much less. That was one of the reasons I liked. But the Animas were more gut-like, but with a covering, a metal covering, and gave them much more life and point, and it was a big fat sound, particularly up in this area. I love them, and I have a couple sets left because they're hard to find now. But here, so far, this is what I'm using in the time being because of the particular projects that I'm working on. This bass is a Joseph Rieger 1805 with the Bussetto corners, and it's been substantiated, and it's got a large 7/8 lower bout and a 3/4 upper bout, and even the notes I really didn't want to play, they sound good. You know, this bass is amazing. The pickups that I use, the bridge that I have here is Rich Barbera transducers, which is transducers built inside the bridge, and there are 8 transducers, and he's got them phased, so 4 of them make it so the arco sounds good, and the 4 for the pitch to sound good, and he's like merged them together and phased them together, and I've been very, very happy with those. But the Schertler DYNB pickup is a little button that fits on the belly of the bass, and it's very mic-like. It's very high-end audiophile quality, and I've been using it for years, and I mix the two together when I play live and through an amplifier, and it's been glorious. What you're hearing here is just one microphone, the DPA 4099. It's a tiny microphone that fits right into the bass. Let me see if I can show it to you. Yeah, so you should be able to see that. And it's a glorious sound. Let me see. And so the preamp, I think all pickups, period. It is my opinion that all pickups need some kind of preamp to help, so when you are playing on an amplifier that is not yours or somewhere else, because nowadays when I travel I don't carry amplifiers. I ask for amplifiers, and then I take my preamp, and then I'm able to balance the sound up and get a little more control. If you don't have the control of using the electronics, you're in trouble. You're asking the sound man to actually get your sound for you, which is not good. So the preamp I use it's called a D-Tar Solstice, but there are several different ones on the market, and you can buy them. They're small, and but every pickup really should have one. If you don't want to use a pickup, fine. It depends on the kind of music that you're playing. But I love this microphone, and then when I mix the microphone with the pickup, it's the best of both worlds for me. This is a DPA 4099, and I just discovered a relatively new, last couple years, a new microphone which I don't have to show you, but it's called Nadine, Nadine, and I think if you go to Google and Nadine microphone, the website will come up. Same thing with the DPA. People ask me what amplifiers I'd prefer if I go somewhere, and I would suggest that they could give me an SWR speaker and amplifier, or an Eden, EDEN speaker amplifier, or Gallon-Kruger. And these are and of course there's an acoustic image, which is a relatively, in the last 10 years or so, that is smaller but very powerful amplifiers that people use, that they carry with, and then they can put that with any speaker anywhere, as long as you get a quality speaker. The thing with the bass, because it's such a slow and try to get it clear, harmonics to pop out, you need more wattage. So you get an amplifier that actually has a minimum of 300 watts. And it's not for volume, it's for clarity of the whole frequency response. So I hope it's been helpful to you, and have a good day. Be safe.
I've been using for years now on the double bass Parastro strings, and these are Eva Perazzi orchestrals on the E and A, I believe, or E, and then the A string and the D string are Eva Perazzi Weiss. It's a little lighter gauge, and I got these new perpetual strings from Parastro, and this is a perpetual G. So these are kind of threading the needle, between, it's that gray area between the steel and the gut string where you have synthetic cores and different wraps. And I've also used olive strings too over the years many times, an olive G. Sometimes I used to use olive G and D, and that's a gut core with, steel wrap over it, or like a silver wrap. This is an old Galliano bass from the 1800s. And it's a beautiful instrument. I also still play my Pullman German bass when I go on the road. And I have a Trevor Davis copy of this bass, a recent bass that was made only, probably, who knows, like 5 years ago or something. Great sounding instrument. Electric basses, all Yamahas, these semi-hollow basses. Recently I have a big one and a little smaller one that I play a lot. I also have some older Yamahas, like a 5-string with active stuff with Jazz Bass pickups that has like flat one strings. Then there's another one that's passive with the Jazz Bass pickups with round one strings. So in terms of pickup, I use the Dave Gage Lifeline. I also use Aguilar amps, all of them, all different kinds, from the smallest Aguilar Tonehammer 350 to the 500 to the 700, depending on the gig. And I use Grace preamps because I also mic the bass most of the time, and I use a DPA 4021, and it goes through the Grace, where you get the phantom power, and it has separate 2 channels, one for the mic and one for the pickup if you want to blend. So that's it in a nutshell from here at my house, and just God bless you guys, and enjoy the bass, and hope that you and your family are safe during this crazy time. Okay, take care. Bye.
Well, I really hope that you've enjoyed this. If you have, you can let us know just by clicking that like button. You can subscribe for more videos, and let's keep the conversation going in the comments. I'd love to hear about what equipment has been working for you. Big thank you to everybody who took part in this. Thanks for watching at home, and we'll see you next time.